Joining us right now is Chris Long of the Green Light Podcast. Who's under the most pressure Sunday night, Chris? Is it
Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers? Chris, you know it's true. You know it's true.
I mean, I honestly, I was listening to what y'all were saying. I came out of that Pittsburgh game and said, yeah, Fields didn't play well. But I think Mike Tomlin, he's used to flying close to the sun, being 500. Like, they're a 4-2 football team. You know, like are we talking about Russell? I'm not, no tone here.
Okay, so here we go. Let's break news to Chris Long, host of the Green Light with Chris Long podcast. So the news breaking, and let's get the soundbite ready to play it for Chris Long as well, from Mike Tomlin. My colleague from NFL Network, Tom Pelissero, saying that now that Russ is healthy, they're going to, in Pittsburgh, give him some first-team reps. And Mike Tomlin was asked point blank, does that mean he might start Sunday night? And he was as blunt as he normally is. Hit it.
You know, we're going to determine that as we get closer to tomorrow. We got some more strategic meetings today, but I'll acknowledge that Russ proved his health last week, man, and we're looking hard at it this week. It is up for consideration.
Up for consideration. What do you think about that?
So brilliant gamesmanship here. Because if you're on an NFL defense, you know, it's one thing where two quarterbacks kind of have the same skill sets and you're like, I'm preparing for one or the other. But I do think there's something to leaving that door open. I came away from that game the other day and I was like, yeah, Fields missed some throws, but he also gets you out of a lot of trouble that I don't think Russ can get you out of. You just started your the same offensive line for 2 weeks in a row for the first time all year, I believe. And then you lose Zach Frazier this week. You know, it's too tough to call for me because I don't know what Russ looks like in practice. You know, that's a tough thing for somebody from the outside to have an opinion that's informed on. But I can tell you that Justin Fields does give them an element of, you know, when it's messy, we can get out of trouble. He's got to hit those throws when he's extending downs. I mean, they left some points on the board with him missing some throws that I know he can make. But at the same time, he also got you out of trouble in some situations where Max Crosby was almost wrecking the game early in the ball game. And so whoever it is, I like what you had to say, Rich, about the pressure. Sunday night is going to be immense on the Jets, certainly, but also on the Steelers. If they do go with Russ, that is the right decision, because here you are, you know, a month and a half into the season or more, and you're saying we are not where I thought we'd be. We're ahead. Like, I don't think anybody thought the Steelers would be where they are right now, and that is you can look at it two ways. Fields has been a part of that, or Fields has kept you from being even better. Even if they start Russ, I want to see Fields in some packages. I really do, because he gives you a skill set that you know, a lot of guys just don't have.
Do you think that might be the best course for the Steelers? I know the axiom of when you have two quarterbacks, you really have none. But, you know, in some ways, getting the neck up ability of Russ to go along with the physical skill set ability of Justin Fields and somehow leave it up to Arthur Smith to find the right blend, the right time to push those buttons. Do you think that's really a sustainable concept in the NFL in 2024, Chris?
I don't think it's sustainable in that you rotate quarterbacks, you know, drive to drive. But I do think there are some ways that you can get an athletic quarterback involved in some packages that you sprinkle in and you keep people honest. I always used to say, like, if I were a coach in the NFL, I'd run Wildcat once a week. I'd sprinkle in something that's going to force, you know, the defensive room that's preparing for me the next week to spend an inordinate amount of time on, you know, a different package or a different run scheme or a different concept and I know this from experience, athletic quarterbacks keep defensive coordinators up at night. Even if they don't respect the quarterback, they respect the multiplicity of what an offense can give you. And so I think, like, at the very least, if Russ is your guy, you find ways to keep Fields involved. Because I do think he gives you something. And he's made some nice plays this year. The last 2 weeks, he's missed some throws and that sort of thing. But I also think that, considering the state of the offensive line at times, the Russ thing seems like a good idea. And then, if you really think it through, are they ready to go back to having an immobile quarterback? It's a totally different style of play. We'll see.
I know. And I'm trying to go through your, my Rolodex, my mental, Rolodex of your career here. Obviously, when you were in New England, this wasn't an issue. And then when you were in Philadelphia, an injury was the reason why there was a quarterback switch. And obviously it put a ring on your finger. But I'm just wondering, how a locker room, if you're Tomlin, you keep a finger on the pulse of your locker room when, again, it's not like you're making this switch due to ineffectiveness, right? You're making a switch if you do it based on some sort of gut and feel that you would have to, right? You'd have to include the locker room's mood, sense, defensive side of the ball, all that stuff. Chris?
Yeah, he's a brilliant, manager of his team. Like, the guy's not a play caller. He's a head coach. And these are the decisions he lives and dies with. And, I think he's made enough of these to know how it's going to go over in the locker room. And I don't think he would make the decision if the locker room was opposed to it. I think that as a player, a position player, our jobs are so, we're in our own little silos, and ultimately we want what's best for the team. We're all going to have varying opinions on what's best for the team. When we went through that quarterback change in 2017, we didn't have a choice. Carson tore his ACL in LA. We win that game. We go in the locker room. We know what time it is. It just is what it is. And same thing happened in 2018 when Carson left with injuries that, he could have continued to play through. But for the most part, I think everybody understood that, he wasn't right physically. So this is a more complicated situation where a guy's gotten you off to a hot start. And as a result, maybe what you come away thinking is this is a decision that can affect our ceiling in a positive way, and maybe raise the floor, and I think maybe by raising the floor, you raise the ceiling for this team, the way they play. I think most importantly for them, they've got to be able to run the ball. And what Najee Harris did last week was really impressive. And, when you get Jalen Warren involved and Cordero Patterson, when this offense is at full strength, they do give you a lot of very, very complicated decisions you have to make. And Davante Adams was a topic of conversation. Brandon Ayuk was a topic of conversation. Those guys aren't going to be walking through that door. So what kind of team do you have to be? You got to be able to run the football, and I need more out of the tight ends in the blocking game. You need to be able to block with Freiermuth, and you need to be able to get those guys involved in the passing game as well. And so I think Russ has seen a lot of football, and he's changed his game as time's gone on. He's got to play within himself. Remember that whole Broncos conversation when he was in Denver? He's got to get comfortable with taking the check down. And I think Arthur Smith, arguably one of the better coordinators he's probably played for. So that would be exciting in its own right. But, I would like to see some Fields too, if you're going to make that switch.
Chris Long here on the Rich Eisen Show, the Green Light podcast host, and also from inside the NFL on the CW, Chris Long right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Your thoughts on the Davante Adams acquisition by the Jets are what?
For the player, I'm surprised because he is under contract till 26, and I'm no contract whiz or cap guru, but I know that reuniting with your friend is great, but what if it's only 12 weeks? What if it's only, the rest of the season? What if it's one more year and there you are again? What if it's, I don't know. So for the player, he must know that Rodgers plans to be around next year. To me, if Rodgers is like, hey, this is it, I don't know if I'm going to forego as a 32-year-old precious time to spin the wheel and say who's going to replace Aaron Rodgers. I think it's a good sign if you want Aaron Rodgers around. And if you watched the game last night, and I was a vocal proponent of him going somewhere else, but you understand why the Jets make the move, right? They don't have a choice. Everybody there's on borrowed time. You got an interim head coach in the building, the whole thing. So I understand why you make the move. I can imagine Garrett Wilson now on the second best cover guy in a third and medium situation. You saw Taron Johnson walk up on him, trying to press him last night, how easy that is for Garrett Wilson. You see them play the Broncos, Surtain takes him away, and the offense is completely different. So you think about Davante Adams and having him all alone on one side of the formation, and that's scary. It is scary because Rodgers, he can still sling it. Some of the high-quality throws he's made this year have been some of the best I've seen all season. For me, it's his mobility that I worry about, and obviously the structure of the entire offense, which looked better last night under Todd Downing. Okay, so part of me is coming away and saying, like, what was the problem with letting Hackett go? because in the first half of that game, especially, it looked like a revelation. And I think the big question for me is, how good can this offense look if he has now two guys that he trusts? Because Lazard isn't a world beater, but Rodgers can make him look very good because he trusts him, and he'll throw him the ball, and they understand each other. And, it's like that ball that he just buried into a sea of bodies last night. And I think he put it on Bernard's hip. And Lazard's like, wow, the ball's exactly where it'd have to be. And juxtaposed to Mike Williams at the end of the game, not running inside the red line, or however Rodgers put it. Like, there are these trust issues that keep popping up. And at the end of 2 games now, you've had to go to Mike Williams. So I look at this as like, hey, what do we have to do to be able to compete? This does not fix the run defense, which is below average. This does not fix the offensive line, to me, which is kind of an average group. This doesn't fix the running game, although it could take some pressure off the running game. I thought Breece Hall looked good again last night, and he's had his moments. But what it does is, in conversion situations, makes this team a little scarier. Now, they dug themselves a hole here, but I think part of the reason you make the trade is, here's who you got the rest of the season: Pittsburgh, New England, Houston, Arizona, Indy, Seattle, Miami, Jacksonville, the Rams, Buffalo, Miami. Okay, so that's rapid fire, but I'll just tell you, 3 out of 10 of the remaining teams, I believe, have winning records that they play. And when you look at the wild card, Pittsburgh, the Chargers, Indy, current players in the wild card race, the Bengals and the Jets are the most serious challengers, in my opinion. And so when you look at the schedule, the remainder of the year, you can get to the bye week and be 500 or above, or just below 500. I think that's the way they're looking at it. And if they can get to that bye week in good shape, then they can justify making this trade, shore some things up on defense. But I will tell you, what the Bills did last night on that first drive was a pummeling.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, Chris, is we're looking at the schedule here too. That makes the game against Pittsburgh and Indianapolis huge if these are teams that you're going to have to, be better than or have a tiebreaker over in a wild card situation. Certainly, they already lost to Denver, which is at 3-3, a game and a half in front of them there. And your point about what the Bills did to start the game, I mean, your defensive coordinator just got elevated in a shock, to the interim HC, and you basically allow a rookie running back to just run right down your throat, and then that's the question I have about what Davante Adams is going to bring. Obviously, it's going to bring optimism. It's going to bring hope. In this conversation, Chris, Rodgers and Davante just appeared together on our friend McAfee's show, and they're looking like, happy, and they don't look 2-4. You know what I mean? Like, that's all going to be well and good. The question is, what does happen when rubber meets the road? Well,
the question for me is it's a 2-win team that has not figured out how to win football games. And it's obvious to me that the quarterback alone, who is one of the best to ever do it, is not enough to get people lined up right. It's not enough to get people on the same page in the passing game. You can fire Saleh. The same thing showed up last night. And I'm a big fan of Jeff Ulbrich, but now Jeff Ulbrich's got the headset, and he's worried about game situations and that sort of thing. How much does that take him away from what he does really well, which is the defense? And now you're down Robert Saleh. So you might add something into the offensive bucket, and they might be hell on wheels to defend on 3rd and medium, but it doesn't make them a formidable rushing group, like an elite rushing offense. It doesn't make them an elite rush defense. They have the guys outside that can cover. They can take pretty much whoever they want away to a degree, but you still have to stop the run late in the season. And is this a win if they go to the playoffs and get bounced in the first round? Because there's always a chance you got to go to Baltimore, who's running for 6 yards a pop. The Chargers are running the ball. The Chiefs are physical. They've got cover guys outside. They have a scheme defensively and confuse you. The Bills, the team you just played, had their way with you on the ground with a 24-year-old rookie that nobody even knew was really going to be a feature in the game. So what happens when you see the Bills again? They get some guys back defensively. So I am looking at this from both sides. I think from one side, I see why you do it. And ultimately, that side's the only side that matters when you're coaching for your life, when you're playing for your life, when you're GMing for your life, you make this move. But, as an analyst, I look at it and I say, is it enough to catapult them into a place where I think they're contenders? And I mean, like, if they had home field advantage and the matchups fell right, they got Aaron Rodgers, now they got Davante Adams, they have Garrett Wilson, they have Breece Hall. They have a really solid defense that has flaws. But let's say you got to go on the road. And, to win a Super Bowl, you have to be very good at matching up with multiple different teams. And I think adding a strength like this is good, but the weaknesses remain. And so we'll see. I mean, it's going to play out over the course of the season. Hopefully for the Jets, we're still having this conversation in December, because that would mean they don't lay 3 eggs in the next 5 weeks.
Chris Long, yeah, for sure. In the couple minutes I have left with you here, there's so many different ways I can go with you. But let's go to Philly. What'd you make of Sirianni? Kind of having a set to with some fans, and then brought his kids to the press conference afterwards. Some of the media members were like, "Well, I couldn't ask him about his job security despite the win with his kids sitting there." And then he apologizes.
Come on, Philly media. You're getting soft. You can't ask a man about his job security in front of his toddlers.
Pretty much, like that's the way, and then he apologized saying that, he just got, he kind of lost himself. But also you're hearing some Jalen Hurts is saying, I asked him to be that sort of guy. We want him to be that guy. I mean, it's a big week going to the Giants, too, with Saquon. This is the entree or the backdrop of this week. What are your 2 cents on the Eagles, Chris?
Gotta win this game. I don't think anybody's freaking out if Jalen played the way he played, which was fine, and you win that game 20-6 or 20-7. The end of the game was ridiculous. I mean, like, if I'm being honest, and, I like Nick. I've been around Nick. I think that fire in him got him to where he is. But once you're there, you have to taper that a little bit, and you have to act like a head coach. And, at the end of that game, I didn't think he acted like a head coach when he was leaving the building in Kansas City, taunting fans who enjoyed a Super Bowl at your expense a few months earlier. And you're jawing at him after a regular season win. To me as a player, there are times when you have to act like the adult in the room, especially in today's NFL where there's not a lot of veterans. And you look at this team, there aren't a ton of veterans, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that you can kind of hang your hat on as being leaders. So I need the coach to act like an adult. And I think he understands that. And I'm sure somebody talked to him about it. But more concerning than that is leaving that team in the game. And one of the biggest decisions of the game for me was dropping back to pass, checking into a shot on 3rd and whatever it was. I think it was maybe 3rd and 1 at the end of that half. And there's no hots. We're running 4 verts. The entire team is on the line of scrimmage. They're bringing pressure, and you end up taking a sack. And what happens? Of course, you get a field goal blocked. And what's worse, they run it back for a touchdown. And so if that doesn't happen, I think we're coming away from that game talking about, hey, Vic Fangio coming out of the bye, being more aggressive. That's good. Cooper DeJean in the slot. The defensive line had 5 sacks. But instead, it's all overshadowed by that decision and the end of the game antics. So I think if they go take care of business against the Giants, who are very tough out, like we've seen that, this is not a foregone conclusion. It's a divisional game. If you can take care of business this weekend, I thought they were sluggish coming out of the bye a little bit. Now they should be pissed off. You know what I mean? I want to see those guys play pissed off. As an Eagles fan or a former Eagle, or as a football player, I think what you got to expect this weekend is a lot of focus, a lot of intensity, and getting this thing back on the right track in a win that you can feel good about.
Chris, you're the man. Who's on your pod? Let's promote it. What do we got?
Shoot, man, just boring old me in the gang. I've kind of got burnt out, so I'm not even booking guests in the middle of the week. I'm just taking my Monday show, my Friday show. You know why I'm burnt out? Because people like Chris Brockman are talking about Drake Maye like it was a big victory that he didn't die on the field. That
Yes, Chris, it was.
That they didn't pull a hearse up.
All I heard all week was people like you and everyone else say how stupid it was, and he went out and had a great game.
Can I finish? Yes. Chris? I didn't even start. I'm sorry, Chris.
Sorry.
No, I'm not saying you interrupt. But before I leave, I had to talk to you, Chris, because I thought what you did is you conflated two takes, which was very convenient. One take is that he was going to get killed, which he did. He got murdered on the field on a couple plays. By my count, he was down 16 seconds after that Hunter sack, the second play of the second half.
It was pretty bad for a second. I was a little worried.
That was not good. Okay,
that was a little. Yeah.
You almost didn't get your victory lap there.
I was a little scared.
And then Will Anderson's dribbling his head like a basketball in the third second of the game. He was pressured 24 times. I don't count myself. I just want to put this on the record because you're my boy. And when I read the tweet, I was like, man, I hope he doesn't count me in this group we talked about on the show. I never said he would suck. But what I did say is he was going to get pummeled, and he did get pummeled. And every week now, that tweet, you got to defend that. Every time he comes back to pass.
But hold on. You said it. I listened to you guys. You said it yourself. Start him out against the worst possible matchup possible, and then it gets easier every week after that. He's not going to see another pass rush like Houston.
That's what Nate said. That's a good point by Nate. But the way I look at it is like, if you're going to do it, why not wait till London to play that outfit? I mean,
well, now Jacksonville's going to look like a high school game.
But Jacksonville's laying 5.5 points.
That's insane. Pat's money line, Chris. You know it.
No, come on. Now I want to say this though. You do have you were right about something at the end of that tweet. You're right about a lot, but you were right about this thing at the end of the tweet. You might be a so-called expert. Okay. Yeah. In quotes.
Just write that down.
At the end of the tweet, you said free agents are going to come play with that kid. I saw some really good things from him in spurts.
I mean, that deep ball to end the half was one of the prettiest throws of the year by anyone.
It was gorgeous. But here's the deal. The two things are not mutually exclusive. The guy can get absolutely mollywopped out there.
Well, I only have 280 characters. One tweet is not, you know what I mean? I didn't want to thread it for people.
That was an emotional New England tweet.
It was.
By the way,
I was fired up.
By the way, he's emotional New England, period.
So fired up.
It's on brand.
But he should be.
And by the way,
that's really good.
Basically, calling him an expert as you're going out the door is like, no. It's like you babysitting my kids and feeding them candy and handing them an iPad 5 minutes before putting them to bed, and then I come home and leave me with them. That's basically what you just did, Chris.
Before you put the kids to bed, I know you're giving me the hook, but the Max Crosby thing is BS, and anybody that thinks Max Crosby pushed that coach out of anger has never been on a football field.
Okay. Very good. You've been so noted. Thanks again, Chris. You're the best. I love when you come on. You know that. So appreciate it.
Good to see y'all.
Everybody check out the Green Light with Chris Long podcast.
It's not
boring. Everybody check out Chris Long right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Fun stuff. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku Channel, 12 to 3 Eastern for free.